Have you ever poured $3 million into the one place on Earth that was supposed to be untouchable, only to watch a pearl-wearing smile turn it into a war zone? What if the woman who greeted you with community standards was actually measuring your land for her next cash grab? And what if the smartest move you ever made was saying absolutely nothing until the moment you could bury her? My name is Ryan Caldwell. I didn't swing hammers or pour concrete myself. Let's not romanticize. But every screw, every slab of imported Tuscan stone, every square foot of this 50-acre fortress was my vision. 3 stories of clean modern lines, infinity saltwater pool kissing the horizon, private base pond stocked with monsters, heated 6-car garage that felt like a cathedral for grown-up toys. The mining business paid for it all, but it also took pieces of my soul. Impossible deadlines, government red tape, the constant mask you wear so the world doesn't see you're one bad quarter away from losing everything. This place was my reset button. I bought the land years before the Pine Ridge HOA even existed, miles from their pastel nightmare of matching mailboxes and approved shrub heights. For a long time it was perfect. Just wind through the pines, the occasional hawk, and silence so deep you could hear your own heartbeat. Then Karen Beaumont decided silence was a personal insult. The first certified letter arrived 2 years ago like a velvet-wrapped grenade. Unapproved gazebo violating aesthetic guidelines. I actually laughed out loud, poured a double bourbon, and watched the eyes swirl while I called Marcus Reed, my attorney. 3 days later, Marcus sent back a cease and desist, so cold it probably frosted their printer. My deed predated their HOA charter by decades. Jurisdiction? They had none. They backed off publicly. Privately, their monthly newsletter started the smear campaign. Mr. Caldwell, the reclusive outsider who refuses to participate in our family-friendly community events. Parents at the gas station suddenly found the floor fascinating when I walked in. That guy doesn't even wave, they whispered. Karen herself, blonde bob sharp enough to cut glass, pearls like she was born wearing them, would smile at every public function and say, "We just want everyone to feel welcome," while her eyes screamed, "Your independence offends my entire existence." I said nothing. I smiled back. I installed 12 discrete cameras with night vision, thermal alerts straight to my phone, covering every approach. I became the ghost they thought they'd already defeated. And I watched. Because people like Karen always overplay their hand. The hand came down hard on a Sunday morning. I was still clearing empty beer bottles from a quiet Saturday night when Earl Jenkins' old Ford rattled up my driveway like it was fleeing a tornado. Earl, 73, hands like tree bark, the man who'd been selling me tomatoes and eggs since the day I moved in. Today he looked like someone had run over his dog, backed up, and charged him for the tire tracks. He didn't wait for me to ask. "They bulldozed all 4 greenhouses, Ryan," he said, voice flat as a gravestone. While I was at my granddaughter's surgery. Showed up with a court order, said I was 20 feet over the shared boundary. Sheriff watched the whole thing and called it civil. He dropped the papers on my patio table. The injunction was signed by Judge Harlan, ex-HOA arbitrator, now suddenly a neutral jurist. Damage estimates already north of 6 figures. Irrigation lines ripped like spaghetti, tempered glass shattered into diamonds of ruin, plastic sheeting hanging in sad surrender flags. The HOA even sent Earl an invoice for demolition services. The sheer psychotic politeness of it made my jaw ache. Earl's family had owned that land since the 1930s. Iron pins his grandfather drove still stood. This wasn't a boundary dispute. This was a calculated hit. I sat him down, poured him a drink he barely touched, and called Marcus. "Same playbook they tried on me," I said quietly. Marcus was silent for a long beat, then, "Too clean, Ryan." The speed, the ex parte filing, the immediate bulldozers, somebody greased palms. That night, I reviewed every camera feed. 2 nights earlier, a black SUV with no plates had parked at the tree. 2 figures with tablets walked the exact path the bulldozers would later take. They'd scouted Earl's weakness because they couldn't crack mine. They picked the old man who still believed honest work and honest lines meant something. Big mistake. The next morning, we went full war room. Marcus filed an emergency injunction freezing any further activity. Ron, A retired state surveyor who owed me a favor was on site by noon. 2 hours later, he looked up from his GPS, grinning like a wolf. 42 feet clear, Ryan. They lied by 22. And get this, their rezoning application calling Earl's Land a community impact buffer was rejected by the city council 3 months ago. Judge Harlan approved demolition anyway. Marcus's voice on speaker sounded almost happy. This isn't enforcement. This is organized land theft wearing pearls. We started documenting the harassment raining on Earl, sudden health department visits over pesticide runoff, fire marshal inspections for flammable hazards, anonymous trucks idling outside his gate for hours. Every incident logged, every plate run, every inspector's name tied straight back to Karen's board. Then the subpoenas hit. Emails between Karen and Judge Harlan. Consulting fees routed through her husband's shell company. Nice round numbers. The State Judicial Ethics Board opened an investigation the same day. Judge Harlan filed for immediate retirement before lunch, the fastest rat to ever abandon a sinking ship. The Attorney General announced a formal probe into systemic HOA abuses. Former victims started calling Marcus in droves. People fined thousands for the wrong shade of shutters, threatened with liens over holiday lights, bankrupted over bird feeders. All of it engineered by Karen, who'd quietly rewritten bylaws to give herself power over adjacent properties. She panicked beautifully. At the emergency community meeting, she released a video. Perfect lighting, soft filter, tears glistening on command. Ryan Caldwell and his negligent farmer friend are radicals who threaten our children's safety and our property values. We must stand together. I watched it twice, just to savor the moment her mask slipped and pure greed peeked through. We traced over $500,000 in HOA funds funneled into a political action committee that somehow paid Judge Harlan through 3 layers of LLCs. Another subpoena. Harlan was arrested at 6:45 p.m. outside his country club, still wearing his golf shoes. Karen issued a press release that she had temporarily stepped down for the good of the community. I smiled at the camera feed of her driveway that night. The smile she gave the reporters was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. She still had 1 card left, and she was about to play it right at my gate. It was a perfect Saturday. Steaks on the grill, cold beer, my Marine buddies Jorge and Ben plus their families turning my backyard into the kind of loud, happy chaos Karen's bylaws would have fined into oblivion. Kids were screaming with laughter, wives were comparing pool floaties, and for the first time in months the air didn't feel like it was holding its breath. Then my phone started lighting up like a Christmas tree. Perimeter alert. Then another. Then 20 vehicles, SUVs, white vans, sedans, rolling in formation along my property line, deliberately staging a visual siege. They stopped exactly at the invisible line they'd been pretending didn't exist. One of the wives whispered, "Ryan, is this normal?" "Nope," I said, voice calm while my pulse did not. Not even a little. Kids were quietly ushered inside under the cover story of an epic game of hide-and-seek. Jorge and Ben were already at my shoulders, years of combat muscle memory snapping back into place without a word. I walked down to the gate, hit the intercom, and let the silence stretch just long enough to make them uncomfortable. Karen stepped forward in a cream pantsuit that probably cost more than Earl's entire crop season. Clipboard in one hand, fake concern dialed to 11. "Ryan, we're here for a good faith negotiation. Your property has been flagged for community restructuring." I laughed, short, sharp, genuine. "Restructuring? That the new HOA word for armed extortion, Karen?" Her smile never wavered. "We are authorized to levy an emergency assessment. Refusal will result in enforcement action." 2 of her goons had already slipped over my south fence and were low-crawling toward the pump house like the world's least competent ninjas. I tapped my phone. Sonic alarm plus directional strobes. The sound hit like a physical wall. The light turned the woods into a disco from hell. The 2 figures popped up flailing like they'd been hit with invisible cattle prods, tripping over each other, trying to scramble back over the fence. One actually lost a shoe. I wish I'd saved the clip for her Christmas card. I called 911. 20 vehicles staging on my property line. Confirmed trespass in progress. Private cameras rolling. Dispatch tone changed instantly. Units en route, sir. Stay on the line. I stepped through the gate just far enough for them to see my face clearly. Jorge and Ben fanned out behind me, silent, broad, unmistakably not playing. Let me be crystal clear, I said, voice low. This land is private. You have zero authority here. Every second of this circus is being recorded for the federal prosecutor. Keep pushing and aggravated trespass, unlawful assembly, and conspiracy charges get added to the pile. Karen's mask finally cracked. You think your mercenary friends protect you? We will bury you in legal fees until you beg us to take this land. At that exact second, the first cruiser rolled up, lights flashing but siren off. Professional calm that somehow made Karen look even more unhinged. She spun toward the officers, all wide-eyed innocence. Thank God you're here. This man has armed thugs. We were simply attempting civil dialogue. The lead officer didn't even blink. Ma'am, we have video of your people climbing his fence. You're on private property. Leave. Now. The 20 vehicles started peeling out one by one, escorted by cruisers like a parade of shame. Karen's face in the rear window as she drove away was the single most beautiful thing I have ever seen. Pure, concentrated hatred mixed with the dawning realization that the game was over. 3 days later, Marcus filed a monster civil suit. Trespass, harassment, attempted coercion, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The filing alone made the local paper's front page. We went nuclear. Rebecca, ex-FBI financial crimes analyst, tore through their books and found a full-blown racketeering operation. Dues from terrified homeowners had quietly funded land grabs funneled to a company owned by Karen's brother-in-law. Over $1.2 million. Then came Annette, former HOA secretary, terrified but furious, with a flash drive containing 200 internal documents and an audio recording of Karen's voice, crystal clear. If we pressure them enough, they'll sell. If they don't, we make their lives hell until they do, and we stay clean. Federal prosecutor took the case the same afternoon. RICO charges. Mail fraud. Conspiracy. The FBI raid hit at 7:45 a.m. Outside Karen's country club. Reporters caught her mid-scream as the cuffs clicked, pearls swinging like a broken pendulum. A week later, the entire HOA board resigned in disgrace. The district court dissolved the association for systemic abuse of power. Victims filed a massive class action for misappropriated funds. Earl received $850,000 in restitution. He rebuilt every greenhouse bigger, smarter, automated, a gleaming middle finger to everyone who tried to break him. I settled for $1.2 million in damages. Quietly. Firmly. 1 year later, we threw the quietest, loudest freedom barbecue this county has ever seen. Earl brought strawberries so sweet they tasted like victory. Jorge handed me a heavy black flask engraved with 3 simple words, to the back line. We raised our drinks to fences, freedom, and the feral ducks that now swim in my pond without a single HOA permit. At the gate, I stopped and looked at the new sign I'd installed the day the dissolution order came through. Private property. No trespassing. HOA-free since day one. Karen is currently serving 7 years in federal prison with no chance of early parole. Last I heard, she spends her days trying to organize the cafeteria seating chart. Here's the only advice I'll ever give you. The clipboard warriors only win when good people stay quiet. Document everything. Stay patient. And when the moment comes, smile, hit record, and watch their entire empire of fake politeness collapse under the weight of its own greed. What do you think? Was I justified in using every legal and financial weapon I had to destroy her? Or did I become what I hated? Drop it in the comments. If you've ever fought an HOA just to keep your own damn garden hose the right color, smash that like button. I'll see you in the next one.